Hi there, this is Q&A with George R.R. Martin about world maps in the upcoming Game of Thrones prequel TV series. Well, what happened was last year, May 2017, he made that big blog post announcement about they're making 5 separate prequel pitch ideas to HBO, and he did Q&A in the blog comments, and he was nice enough to answer one that I made. Here's a screenshot of it. And I explained, I'm an administrator from the Game of Thrones wiki, and the problem we have is that they never updated the TV world maps, that they're all out of date, and this makes it difficult for us to write up certain geography articles on regions outside of Westeros. I'm not sure why they never updated it, and I'm just hoping the next set of showrunners will make sure to do that. And how the map artist himself weighed in on this, the discrepancy, and said, none of these maps are 100% accurate. They're medieval maps that Martin himself has said the farther away you get from Westeros, the less accurate they are, because they're maps as known to people in Westeros. And I never knew why they didn't update them, so I asked, was it for some legal reason that you never sold them the updated version of your maps or something? He didn't react that way at all. He just said, will a prequel show, should it update the world maps, can it? And he said, I would vote for that, certainly, was his answer. Now, he knew what I was talking about because he cares about such details, but for everyone else, let me explain the context. That's all he said, but in context of just, he seemed confused why no one had updated it either. So to explain what's going on here, the first 2 books only gave maps for Westeros itself, not the other continents. First 2 books, 1996, 1998. Then Book 3 came out in 2000, which is when Daenerys goes to Slaver's Bay, so it included a map of Slaver's Bay, which is seen here. And it also shows Valyria and bits of Sotherios and Nath, which is their fantasy version of Africa. That's all we knew for many years. The rest is just you have to pick apart from the text where certain areas are. The free cities, which are the closest other lands to Westeros, you had to guess, well, it kind of seems Braavos is in the northern part of it. Volantis seems like it's one of the southern ones. You had to guess. As the history of these came out, the last new map was in 2000 with Slaver's Bay. 2011, when Season 1 of the Game of Thrones TV show came out, HBO put out what must have been an advanced map Martin gave them, which actually showed both sides of the narrow sea. Westeros is on the western shore, and on the eastern shore is the westernmost of the free cities. It wasn't all the free cities, but still it was a little preview of, if you're going by the TV show, this is the first time we had a map showing exactly where Braavos is, or Pentos. I think because Season 1, they probably asked Martin for, look, if we're going to have it start with Daenerys and Pentos, you need to show where that is relative to King's Landing. But that was early 2011, and later that same year, late 2011, Book 5 was released, A Dance with Dragons, between Seasons 1 and 2, which contained the first full Free Cities map, showing the entire Free Cities region from Braavos to Qohor, Tyrosh to Volantis. First time we actually saw Volantis on a map. Because in Book 5, that's when Tyrion is traveling east to meet Daenerys. The TV show glossed over that he has this long trek from Pentos to Volantis, where he goes down the roaring river and sees all the ruins of past civilizations, and he gives information on them. So, good that the Free Cities are major locations mentioned since the first book. Characters are from there. And here in an ebook version, you have one that shows both of these maps combined. Fair enough, but that isn't the whole world. So, tell me if you're one of the people doing this like me. Fans had to guess at the full world map by just putting the Slaver's Bay map in the bottom corner of the Free Cities map, because Volantis is northwest of the Slaver's Bay, and in the southeast of the Free Cities, it's where they overlap. So this is kind of what our view of the whole world was by Season 2-ish. But other regions that they mention or even go to, we just had to guess on, like the Dothraki Sea. It's just, it's east of the Free Cities, north of Slaver's Bay. It's just ambiguous. Or Karth. Daenerys spends Book 2 in Karth, and we didn't have a book canon map of that. And the Summer Islands, all we really knew is that, well, they're south of Westeros and the Free Cities, but west of Valyria. So this is our amorphous conception of what the whole world was like leading up to Season 2. Then, when Season 2 was actually released, HBO put out a full world map that Martin must have given them because, Daenerys is going to Qarth, we need to see where everything is. So this was the first full world map anyone saw, and it was released by HBO for Season 2. And you see Dothraki Sea, you see Qarth in the east. Now, the TV world map accurately depicts the Dothraki Sea, but it makes no attempt to depict the Summer Islands, which are this location they keep mentioning. It's their fantasy version of Africa. And, yeah, the narrative doesn't go there, but, they mention it enough. Why isn't this on a map? And oddly, this world map is meant for TV viewers. It's meant to just focus on, well, everything east to Qarth. It didn't need to show anything further south, so they cropped it, I guess. That it even cuts out the parts of Sothrios we did know about from the Slaver's Bay map. Sothrios is the third continent, their fantasy version of Africa. The Summer Islands are an archipelago that extends to the west of it. That they cut all that out, even the parts we did have maps for from the Slaver's Bay map, including Nath Island, which is prominently on the map there. The other really big difference is it puts the Jade Sea as extending north of Qarth. The Qarth is at its southern end. And that big blue sea on the easternmost edge of the map that you have there. And this is important because the text frequently says Yi Ti, which is their fantasy analog of China, is on the north coast of the Jade Sea. So this drastically affects how big Yi Ti is. Well, is it a whole geographic region? Because now it's just this narrow strip of land between the Jade Sea and the Shivering Sea to the north. It didn't really seem to make sense. Really, what happened is this. HBO's Season 2 world map was based on an early draft version Martin sent them in advance for spring of 2012. I'm pretty sure because, hey, Daenerys is going to Qarth, please send us a world map, and he just gave them what he had on hand, which was a rough draft. Because after Season 2, October 2012, they came out with The Lands of Ice and Fire, which is, they've been working on this for years, the official world map for book canon. And it's not a book, you buy it as a book, but it's folders of fold-out maps, wall poster maps, in loving, great artistic detail, of illustrated cities and everything, and first and final full canon world map for the A Song of Ice and Fire novels. So whatever Martin gave them for Season 2 must have been specifically a rough draft of that he'd been working on map projects for a few years. So this is what we thought the world looked like, and this is the known world official map from Lands of Ice and Fire. It's not just new information, it's also a glorious illustration, but just look at all this new information we have, things barely mentioned in passing, that you tantalized, you want to know more about them. By way of comparison, this is I took the same map and cropped it and cut out the Summer Islands there. It went from this to expanding to this, and plus a lot more detail in the regions we did know about. The biggest addition, of course, is the East. They call it the further east instead of the far east, for whatever reason, their version of Asia. That Yi Ti is their version of China, Leng is their version of Japan, and all these lands that we barely heard about in the main novels, and all these histories about them that came associated with it, great stuff. And it explained it, they never quite mentioned this before, that there's the biggest mountains in the world are the Bone Mountains, that they're a spine of the world mountains, if you will, that are just east of the Dothraki and Qarth, running in a straight line from the north of Essos down to the south. So it's everything east of the Bones they don't have as much contact with through trade and travel, so they're semi-legendary, and they do warn these maps aren't entirely accurate once you go east of the Bones. This is conjecture, and our image of it is a little rough, but still, seeing this, zooming on the Golden Empire of Yeti and its ruins, which are bigger than cities in Westeros. The Imperial Palace of Yeti is the size of all of King's Landing. They're the oldest civilization. They're more advanced than Westeros is. Think of it as a brutal fantasy magic version of Romance of the Three Kingdoms. It's stuff we really want to know more about. Endeling there, which is their Japan. And other stuff like the mysterious Shadowlands and Ashai, the city of warlocks and sorcerers that Melisandre is from, which is east of Yeti. And then you get even farther east of Ashai, at the real edges of the map. Here there be dragons at the edge of the known world. You get to Carcosa, strange city ruled by its Yellow King. But there's all this other stuff in the world map that's also great, particularly the Summer Isles, because it's strange that the Summer Islands are not this distant thing on the edge of the map. They're as close to Westeros as the Free Cities, just south instead of east. I altered this map up here showing that, the Summer Islands are pretty close to Westeros and connected to it and the Free Cities through the major shipping lanes. This isn't some far-off mysterious land. It should appear on their maps. They know it pretty well. I mean, they have heavy trade ties, big merchant fleets. They say every one of the 5 cities in Westeros, like King's Landing and Old Town, major port cities, every one of them has a substantial Summer Islander population of ship crews that are docked there to trade, that there's a big merchant presence of Summer Islanders in every major city, and they're a common sight. It's kind of annoying that the TV show cut that out, that, it's not unusual to see black people in King's Landing as wealthy foreign merchant princes. And they cut all that for time, but it's not it's remote and on the edge of the map. If you look at the world map, it's as far south of Volantis as Braavos is north of it. That Braavos is the northernmost free city, Volantis is the southernmost. It's just go that far again south and you get to the Summer Islands. And also, combined with the World of Ice and Fire sourcebook 2 years later, we got a lot of detail on each of the Summer Islands. They're not just a monolith of, it's Fantasy Africa. Well, do they have distinct personalities? Well, Wallano is the one with all the major cities on it because it's got the best climate, but Jala is the biggest one with all the natural resources. But Kaj is kind of the 4th largest one, but it's the shipyard island where 3 out of 4 ships are made. Lots of interesting cultural details, so it's not just, they're Fantasy Africa off on the edge of the map there, that it shows them as a culture and develop them with maps, and you can point to it. So here is the problem that I asked George R.R. Martin about. We assumed that, by 2013, after Lands of Ice and Fire came out, for Season 3, they would update the TV show's world map to the current official Lands of Ice and Fire map. And then Season 3 came, and nothing happened. And it has never been updated through Season 7, or now when I'm making this in 2018. Which also means that any merchandise you buy featuring the TV world map is inaccurate. Things like they sell 3D puzzles of Essos based on the outdated world map. They sell these 3D globe maps of the whole world, which leave off Sotherios and get Yeti wrong. And this is all the more strange because, starting in Season 3, the TV show introduced Missandei, who is from Nath, an island off the northern coast of Sotherios. She wasn't born in Slaver's Bay. She says, I am from Nath. I remember Nath. So they introduce a character who is actually from Fantasy Africa, and then left Fantasy Africa off of the map in that season. So Season 4 hours, and she actually says, I am from Nath. It is an island off the coast of Sotherios. You can't point to that in the TV show. She's from the regions that got cut from the TV series world map. And they kind of fudged it a little for the opening credits, that if you notice, because look again here at the Slaver's Bay book map, they did have a map of Sotherios and Nath, but not the Summer Islands because they're further west, so they cheated a bit that the world map you see in the opening credits does accurately depict Sothrios, and Nath is that island on the left that looks like a backwards question mark. But it's not in like wall posters you can buy of this, or throw pillows I've seen that have maps on them. And they also fudged it a little that they know the Summer Islands should be there, but they never used the same design as the official maps. That this is season 5 or so, you'll see them putting blobs, indistinct blobs, south of the Narrow Sea, roughly where the Summer Islands might be, but they're out of the corner of your eye. They never focus on it. Just, yeah, those islands should be there. Just, why didn't you update the map to show them distinctly in the design that they're supposed to have? And they're never consistent about it. Just, oh yeah, there's stuff over there. So, the TV canon world map they continue to use omits Sothrios, Fantasy Africa, omits its associated offshore islands like Nath and the Summer Islands. Second problem you see here is the location of the Jade Sea, and thus Yi-Ti, Fantasy China, is drastically different and outdated. It's south of Karth, the Jade Sea, which means, because it's not north of it, it makes Yi-Ti so much bigger. It's this vast area. It's not this tiny strip of land. So, you might be asking, why does this matter? True, the narrative of the main TV series never physically goes to Sothrios and the Summer Isles, and never goes east of the Dothraki or Karth. It doesn't affect on-screen locations, that is true. But say that aloud, redacted in here on screen. The official maps don't actually need to depict Fantasy Africa or Fantasy Asia. They don't really matter. You know, sometimes when you think a thing, but then you say it aloud, it sounds really different. Okay, the Summer Isles are essentially the A Song of Ice and Fire series version of Wakanda. This utopian, wonderful, city-states, Africa-inspired place. And by comparison, here is a Marvel world map. And let me zoom in here. This is where Wakanda is. It's sort of southwest of Ethiopia, north of Uganda and Kenya, at the point where they all meet. And yes, I know, according to old school Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, it's actually south of that near Tanzania, and in the 70s they said it was in West Africa. I don't want to reopen old wounds here and start that old thing debating, well, where exactly is Wakanda? I'm sticking with the Marvel Atlas number 2 version, which is what the Marvel Cinematic Universe uses in their on-screen maps. Okay, this is where Wakanda is. We don't need to start arguing about that. I'm going by the current version. Guys, the point is, this is the Marvel world map. And you have other locations around the world and other continents like Wakanda in Africa, or Madripoor, which is basically Singapore in Southeast Asia, all these other places. Imagine if you took the Marvel world map and cut out all the other stuff to focus on North America and Europe, and something titled Map of the World, not just Map of America, Marvel World Map, containing America and Europe, and cutting out all those other, those are countries you don't really care about. So when I see this outdated Season 2 early rough cut world map that HBO never updated, and even today still uses as, this is a map of the world, with this empty space of ocean I've circled there, that where the Summer Isles should be, this to me is the direct equivalent of that Marvel World Atlas that cuts out Africa and Wakanda. That you left all of that out. Even the parts of Sothrios we did know about are cut from this. That you cut off all of Africa and you get Asia really wrong. That just there's this gaping hole of open ocean where their Wakanda, the Summer Isle, should be. Which is particularly relevant because the show has gained some criticism for how it's been handling diversity. That Just last year, July 2017, which was after I talked to Martin about that, headlines that John Boyega from Star Wars slams Game of Thrones for lack of diversity. He said, there are no black people. And yes, there are a few black individuals, like 2 or 3 in the whole thing, but as a culture, they cut out all the stuff of meeting. There's points where, like, Samwell takes a ship from Braavos to Old Town, and he takes a Summer Islander ship, and they explain to him, without actually having to go there, this is what the Summer Islands are like, and this is what our culture is like. They've never had a scene with Missandei actually explaining this is what the culture of Nath Island is like, that their religion demands utter pacifism, different aspect of their religion that symbol is a butterfly. All we really know about black people in the Game of Thrones TV series compared to the books, which do a better job, is, some of them are slaves captured by people on the other continents. That's how you encounter them. That in terms of, I can say, if I were to talk to John Boyega and go, well, no, there are flourishing Africa-inspired civilizations in the Song of Ice and Fire world in Game of Thrones. And if he goes, okay, point at one on a map, and I go back to that other map and go, they're right, there's just this blank spot on the map where their version of Africa should be. You see what the problem is here for me with this, that when I'm making wiki articles about this is what Yeti is like, this is what the Summer Isles are like, I don't have maps I can use, or to show them in relation to where everything else is. Yeti is wrong, and the Summer Isles physically don't exist on a map anywhere, not just outdated, they're nothing, it's open ocean. So if someone asks, where are the black people, I can't point to a map. This is a problem. So not updating the maps also sends the message that HBO has no intention of ever visiting Yeti or the Summer Isles in any prequel. And yeah, they're pretty far down the prequel list compared to things Martin wrote novellas for. But no, even in some of the other prequels, you should see Summer Islander characters that come to Westeros and the Free Cities as mercenaries and talk about their homeland. I mean, Season 1, you had Serial Pharrell talking about Braavos and having to actually go to Braavos. So just that, you don't need to be on the map. But on top of that, particularly with the Summer Islands, the most likely candidate for the prequel that they said, one of them is not set in Westeros. Most likely candidate is Nymeria and the 10,000 ships versus the Valyrians. And it's like this Aeneid-like travel story with this refugee fleet. And yeah, in Nymeria and the Rhoynar, they actually visit Sotharios, and they visit the Summer Isles in that. These are locations, some of the top prequel candidates. I'm pretty sure that Nymeria is probably the 5th prequel idea they're pitching, the one that isn't in Westeros. You would go to the Summer Islands in that. You need to update your maps for this. So, again, the question I had all this time, bringing you back to the beginning here, if you didn't know about this when I started, was I was asking Martin, why haven't they updated the maps? I always assumed maybe it was for some legal reason, but he just said, I said, will prequel shows fix the world map, updating from the rough draft version dating back to Season 2 to the final Lands of Ice and Fire version? And Martin just succinctly said, I would vote for that, certainly. See, all this time since 2013, I wondered if maybe HBO's TV series maps weren't updated for, well, why wouldn't they? I would assume for some legal reason. Something like Martin never sold them the rights to the new Lands of Ice and Fire maps, and these types of things happen all the time in comic adaptations, like, we're Sony, we can have Spider-Man, but we can't have X-Men. We're Marvel Cinematic Universe, we can't have X-Men in this. I assumed it was some legal rights mumbo-jumbo. But again, by Season 3, when he was still working intimately with the TV show, why wouldn't he have just updated the map in it? But I directly asked Martin, he was very nice to respond to it, and I brought up, is there some legal reason? And he mentioned no legal reason. Instead, he said he was fine with the prequels TV series updating the maps. So why hasn't this been updated? Is it simply that no one at HBO even bothered to consider updating them? That fan-made wikis are more invested in it than they are? That we're the ones keeping track of the lore more than they are? I don't know. But my message to them, and please share this video of just, you need to put Fantasy Africa and Fantasy Asia on your maps. They exist for the book maps. Update your TV show maps, because when people ask, where are the Asian people? Where is China? Where are the Africa city-states? Where are the black people? Well, I can't point at a location on a map. This is a problem, and I ask anyone who's working on these upcoming prequels, we asked the current showrunners, they never respond to even basic complaints about other things, but I really hope the new wave of showrunners is more receptive to fan interaction and will realize we need to update the world maps.